Okay, I couldn't leave it as it was. There's always something to come back to. I keep mentioning parsing JSON and playing around with the JSON, so I thought I would actually start the parsing on this. Let's just take a look at the emulator which I've got up and running. If I just press, I get my JSON message back. Now, this is simple, or a simple JSON message. It's only got a couple of items, so I feel happy that I can just pass this and not give away too much for a project. You would probably need to pass the one that brings back all the different people in the person database, so that is more the parser that a piece of coursework is looking for. So I'm just going to pass this simple message, and instead of having the JSON here in between these brackets, and I'm just going to have the message. So all I want is one or more fields have not been filled if I did that. So I'm going to pass it and put the message in. So let's get busy with this. I'm probably going to run the emulator a few times just to show you what's happening with the JSON. So first of all, we're going to do it down in the onPost execute when that's finished. I'm going to be changing this line here, so I'm not going to be using the result. What's going to go in there is my JSON that I am using. So after I've performed all of these functions, let's just make a couple of lines so you can see the code. I'm going to start doing JSON. Now there is some built-in libraries to handle JSON, so you just need to see how the JSON is formatted using that JSON formatter and validator to help you go through this process. This is a really simple piece of JSON which doesn't really need a lot of parsing, so it's a little bit of a simplistic task, but it's still useful. So I'm going to create a JSON object. Now the JSON object is capable of taking in that JSON string and knowing about it. So for example, if we sent in just a normal string, maybe a web page with loads of HTML and not JSON stuff, it's going to know that that isn't JSON, and it's going to throw a problem, and we'll see that in a second. So I'm going to give this a name, myJSON. So I've got an object called myJSON, which is a JSON object, and I'm going to initialize it. So it's a new JSON object, and it needs here the result that we pass in. So that is the JSON string. And finish off the line. Now you'll notice that it's underlined in red. This is sort of, it's inputting something into the JSON object, and as I said earlier, it might not be JSON, it might just be text, or it might be HTML. So we've got to have an exception to manage this. So if it doesn't have JSON, it's going to throw an exception. So we click on the little red button and surround it with a try and catch. So in the try section, so I've started off my JSON object. What I want to do is actually take a look at what my JSON object is going to be. So I'm going to set up a log to have a look at the values so you can see what we've got. So if I just type JSON there, and then my JSON, and at the moment that is an object, it's not a string, so I need to convert it to a string so that we can see what the object contains. There we go. So I'm going to run the emulator now, and hopefully I'm going to see what that JSON object contains. So if you bear with me, in our usual wait for half an hour for something to happen. There we go. So I'm going to first of all pull up the console and press that. I'm going to get an error message here, but I have picked up the JSON text, and as you can see, here's my JSON, and there is the JSON text that has been passed into the object. So we've got the JSON text. Now we're going to play around with that, and what we're going to do is look for this item, the message, and we're going to pull out the data that is associated with it. Don't forget, these are key value pairs. That is the key message, and that is the value. One or more fields have not been filled, and I want to print that to the screen. So that's called parsing the JSON. So let's get rid of this log D and start thinking about what we're going to be doing. So we need a string, because that's what we did when we had a look at this item down here. We converted it to a string, and I'm going to have a string which is the message part. So I've set up a variable called message, and I'm going to pull that back from my JSON variable. And I'm not going to explain what optional string is, but we're going to use it. I'll let you look that up in the references, but it's necessary to pull that information back. And then I'm going to say that what I wanted was the message in quotes. So it's now looking in this string for the message in the quote, and it's going to find the value. And I know that looks like it's a string. It's not, but we're going to have to convert that to a string, as we did in the log to string. And now I have my message, and we can have a look again to see if we've just pulled out the message. So if I do a log.d, and let's go with that one again. Let's call it JSON, and this time I'm just going to give it the variable, and I'm not going to convert this to string. It should already be a string. So hopefully that's going to work. Let's run the emulator again to see this work. So now when I just press the button with empty fields, I get my message, my JSON message again. But notice down here in my console, I have got just the string, one or more fields have not been filled. So I've got the information that I need, and that is stored in message. So I can use that. I can just replace this result. So instead of having the JSON appear on the screen, I can just put message in there. However, I'm going to have a problem. First of all, I'm going to get rid of that line. And it's just a familiar problem that we've had before. So if I type message in here, it's underlined. So it doesn't know what message is. That's what it's saying. I cannot resolve the symbol message. And the reason is that we declared the string message inside the try-catch block. Okay. So outside of that try-catch block, it has no knowledge of what the variable message is. So all we need to do is declare the string message outside the try-catch block. So if I declare it under firstname.requestFocus, that should help me quite a bit. So if I just copy that and paste it there, why does it do that? Close that line up. String message, and I don't need to redeclare a string message there, so I'm just using the message. Now this message, we've declared it outside the try-catch block, so it can be seen inside the try-catch block, and also it can be seen outside there, and that's pretty much the job done. We've parsed our JSON, we've looked at the message part, and we have extracted the message, which is down here, from the message part. So if I now run my program, I still seem to have, it might not have been initialized. So we could have an issue here when we, it might not get set. We might not have a message and it will be null. So all I need to do is to either set it to blank or actually give it a message. If I give it a message, could not pass data. So if we have got a text or a HTML file, when we come down to here, it will say could not pass data, rather than just having an empty string. And that has got rid of the error message, so we had to initialize it before we used it. And you'll find that happens quite a lot. We did it up here as well when we had to set the connection to null and the reader to null before we use them. Hopefully that's it. Let's just stop the emulator running and restart it with the new program. We can test it out now. There we go, we seem to be running. So if I press, it just prints one or more fields have not been filled, which is much better now that we're pulling the messages from JSON, rather than having the angle brackets and a strings meshes there. And we can test it out for other items. So if I put in a first name, Harry, oh, I always struggle when I'm thinking of names. Harry Wells, there we go. Now let's give this the problem of a -3, so the data should be rejected. So if I press, there you go, the data was rejected. And if I give it David Starkey, age 60, and press enter, I should have the fact that the data was accepted and just the message here. There we go, the data was added to the database. So we've managed to parse very simply the data. If you are going to be doing a project which requires a JSON parser, you'll be doing exactly the same thing here. It will be a little bit more complicated because you will have to think of the structure. So it will sort of be a person, and then there'll be an array of people, each with a name and a surname and an age, and there might be 10 of them. So you will need to have arrays set up here to read those. So it does get quite complicated and quite complex, but in essence no different to what we've actually done. So I'll just stop that, and that's the parsing done.